Hey guys, how's it going? Prepare for a trip back in time and revisit some of the greatest icons of real-time strategy games. Today I bring 10 RTS classics for PC that every fan needs to play before they die. Experiences that not only challenge your mind, but also show why this genre is still so special and timeless. I'm Matthew, and we'll start the list with StarCraft, simply one of the greatest milestones in RTS history. Blizzard managed to create a game that not only popularized the genre, but also set standards that are still valid today. Its greatest stroke of genius was the balance between the three races, Terrans, Zergs, and Protoss, each with its unique style, but all viable in competitive play. The game brought an epic and memorable campaign, with a science fiction narrative that seemed to have come from a TV series. Kerrigan, Raynor, and other characters became icons, and even today fans remember the plot fondly. It was one of the first RTS games to truly invest in an engaging story within the genre. In the multiplayer aspect, StarCraft practically became a sport. In South Korea, it was responsible for turning esports into a cultural phenomenon. Thousands of players spent hours in LAN houses trying to perfect strategies and build orders. It was the birth of RTS as a truly competitive game.
Forces are under attack. The Hive Cluster is under attack.
Warcraft 3 marked the transition from traditional RTS to something more hybrid and creative. Blizzard once again innovated, placing powerful heroes at the center of the gameplay. This mix of RTS with RPG elements gave the game a unique identity, and it was this very formula that inspired the creation of MOBAs like Dota and League of Legends. The campaign is another highlight, with a cinematic narrative and iconic characters like Arthas, Thrall, and Illidan. Those who played it at the time will hardly forget the fall of Arthas and his transformation into the Lich King, one of the most impactful moments in gaming history. Graphically, the game also brought a stylized look that has aged very well. The design of the units, scenarios, and spells had a lot of personality. Furthermore, Blizzard's cutscenes were on another level, capable of impressing any player at the time. In multiplayer, Warcraft 3 offered one of the most creative environments of all time. The map editor was responsible for giving rise to legendary mods such as Tower Defense, Hero Arena, and of course Defense of the Ancients, the famous Dota. The impact of this on the industry was gigantic.
You will automatically...
My life for
Research
the Horde.
complete.
Yes?
We need more gold.
My life for the Horde.
I am the War Chief.
Age of Empires 2 is, without exaggeration, the most beloved RTS in history. It brought a perfect balance between accessibility and strategic depth. Playing with different civilizations, each with its own advantages and unique units, was something that captivated millions of players around the world. The medieval setting was a charm in itself. Building castles, training elite archers, or sending heavy knights to the battlefield gave an epic feeling. It was as if you were truly in command of an empire. The campaign mode was engaging and educational, featuring historical figures like Joan of Arc, Genghis Khan, and Saladin. This gave the game not only entertainment value, but also a cultural and historical touch that few RTS games have managed to achieve. The multiplayer transformed Age of Empires 2 into a true phenomenon. Even today, there is an active community with tournaments and players who are still exploring new strategies. The Definitive Edition version brought improved graphics and even more content, keeping the game alive in 2025. Age of Empires 2 is not just a classic, it's almost a religion for strategy fans. One of those games that every gamer needs to experience at least once in their life. Red Alert 2 is, without a doubt, one of the most charismatic and fun RTS games ever created. While many games sought to be serious and realistic, Westwood embraced the absurd and delivered a game full of personality. The dispute between the Allies and Soviets turned into chaotic battles with Tesla tanks, giant squids, and even armies of psychics commanded by Yuri. The campaign was a true spectacle of exaggeration. With live-action cutscenes full of over-the-top acting, the game conveyed that B-movie atmosphere that ended up becoming its trademark. At the same time, the missions were challenging and creative, always keeping the player aware of new mechanics. The balance between fun and strategy was perfect. You could invest in fortified bases, quick attacks, or bet on special units. Each faction had its unique charm and style, which made the matches always interesting. In multiplayer, Red Alert 2 shone even more. The matches were fast, dynamic, and always ended in epic situations. Who has never been surprised by a massive air attack or an invasion of engineers stealing constructions?
Power to overwhelm and destroy. Creation of humanoids. Power to overwhelm and destroy. The product.
Company of Heroes revolutionized RTS by bringing a greater focus on realism and real-time tactics. Instead of just building bases and accumulating giant armies, Relic's game made the player think about positioning, cover, and intelligent use of the terrain. It was almost like a war chess game in the middle of World War II. The graphics were impressive for the time. Explosions, dynamic destruction, and soldiers reacting realistically to the environment made the battles immersive. It was impossible not to get goosebumps seeing a tank crossing a street while buildings collapsed around it. The campaign was intense and full of memorable moments. Each mission brought different challenges, from defending strategic positions to advancing into enemy territory under heavy fire. The cinematic atmosphere made you feel like you were inside a war movie. The resource system was also innovative. Instead of simply collecting ores or wood, you needed to control strategic points on the map. This made the game much more dynamic and encouraged constant confrontations for control of the territory. Company of Heroes proved that RTS could be tactical, realistic, and, at the same time, extremely fun. Even today, it is considered one of the best war games of all time in the genre.
Первое подразделение на склоне. Выделите все отряды, которые сможете, и приведите их в склону. Нас прибегает! Позиция не меняет позицию! Мы не можем пошевелиться! Несколько подразделений у нас на склоне, но нам нужно больше! Половина роты Эйбл еще на берегу! Проведи их к склону!
Отличная работа. Рота Эйбл вся здесь. Где же эти чертовы инженеры? Нам нужны инженеры, чтобы взорвать колючку. Приведите их к склону.
Инженеры!
Веди инженеров.
Быстрее!
Это укрытие простреливается со всех сторон. Инженеры, сюда! Сейчас!
Мы почти на месте. Нам нужно еще несколько отрядов на склоне. Почти! Инженеры, вперед! Быстрее!
Нам надо убраться с чертова берега! Необходимо уничтожить тот бункер! МГ-42, 2!
Total Annihilation was one of the first RTS games to truly impress with its scale. Launched in 1997, it put the player in command of gigantic armies, with battles that could fill the screen with units and explosions. For the time, it was simply unbelievable to see so many elements at the same time. The game stood out for its simulation system. Unlike other RTSs that worked with simpler mechanics, Total Annihilation brought real ballistic projectiles, terrain that influenced the battle, and even aerial, ground, and naval units coexisting in harmony. In multiplayer, Total Annihilation became even more insane. Players could create large-scale confrontations, and the game did not lose its identity even in chaotic matches. It was a true demonstration of technical and creative power. Few remember it as much as Age of Empires or StarCraft, but Total Annihilation was extremely influential and paved the way for large-scale games like Supreme Commander. A true pioneer.
The core invasion of Imperion reached its most critical point when core forces destroyed one of the major planetary habitats and used the raw materials to construct.
Supreme Commander is practically the natural evolution of total annihilation. The game took the idea of large-scale battles to another level, putting the player in command of gigantic armies on colossal maps. It was an RTS that required not only strategy, but also a macro view of the entire battlefield. One of the differentials was the possibility of infinite zoom on the map. You could follow a single tank crossing a bridge or zoom out the camera to see the entire war happening in real time. This mechanic gave a sense of grandeur that no other RTS had. The units also impressed. Each faction had unique constructions and armies, and it was possible to create everything from small squads to robotic colossuses that completely changed the course of the match. The final battles were mind-blowing. Multiplayer was a true test of skill and resource management. Players had to balance economy, production, and strategy in the midst of battles of hundreds of units happening simultaneously. It was not a game for the faint of heart. Supreme Commander is remembered today as the pinnacle of large-scale RTS. Whoever is looking for a game that conveys the feeling of commanding a total war needs to try this classic. Rise of Nations managed to unite the best of two worlds, the depth of an RTS and the scale of a turn-based strategy game like Civilization. The idea of starting in an ancient era and advancing to modern times in real time was simply brilliant. Each civilization had its own advantages, which made each match unique. In addition, the game introduced the national borders mechanic, which directly influenced the expansion of territory and battles. This gave a more strategic and less rushed feel than other RTS games. The variety of tactics was absurd. You could win by military force, but also by technological or economic supremacy. This freedom made Rise of Nations stand out among the classics. The campaign mode was very interesting, inspired by board games where you advanced by conquering territories on a world map. This gave a sense of progression and conquest that went beyond isolated battles. Rise of Nations is considered by many to be one of the most complete RTS games ever made. It offered scale, depth, and accessibility, becoming a must-play classic for anyone who loves the genre. Star Wars Empire at War was a gift for fans of the saga and RTS. For the first time, players could command large battles between the Empire and the Rebel Alliance on land and in space. The feeling of recreating epic scenes from the movies was incredible. The game had two major highlights, the space battles and the galactic campaign. In space, you controlled fleets of ships in grand combat, while in the entire galaxy you managed planets, resources, and strategic movements. It was like mixing RTS with global strategy. Seeing a Star Destroyer enter the scene or launching a Rebel attack with X-Wing squadrons was one of the most striking experiences for any Star Wars fan. The game really captured the essence of the franchise. The hero system also added a lot of charm. Characters like Darth Vader, Leia, and Boba Fett could change the course of a battle alone, which gave the game even more identity. Empire at War may not have been the most balanced routes in the world, but it was certainly one of the most fun and memorable, especially for those who grew up passionate about Star Wars.
Taking fire. Losing power. There's that bandit again. Star Cruiser here. Here's the perfect fight as the morning launch their warhead.
Standing by.
Star Cruiser standing by.
Jamming designated target.
Charge batteries for maximum damage. Ready. Attacking. Victory is ours, men.
System
Heading out.
Stronghold Crusader is one of the most different and fascinating Redis games ever created. Instead of focusing only on armies and battles, it brought a complete simulation of life in a medieval castle. You not only trained soldiers, but also managed resources, food, and even the happiness of the people. The Crusade setting gave the game a unique charm. With maps full of deserts and fortresses, the player needed to think not only about war, but also about keeping their people alive in adverse conditions. The siege battles were one of the highlights. Building walls, towers, and catapults to defend your castle, while the enemy tried to invade with ladders and battering rams, was an exciting and tense experience. The artificial intelligence also stood out. The enemy lords had distinct personalities, and each match against them became a different challenge. It was almost like facing real rivals, each with their own styles and habits. Stronghold Crusader became a cult game, remembered fondly even today. It is one of those RTS games that escapes the standard formula and delivers something unique, brilliantly mixing military strategy and kingdom management. Well, that was the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and see you next time.
Archers, ready! Not enough gold. Weapons needed, shot. Sire. Fall in! Weapons needed, sire. Attain! Shot! Jump to wings! We await orders! My boy's yours! Stone. Quick march!